It often feels like there's some kind of invisible script guiding everything we do. From negotiating who does the dishes to massive international treaties, it's like we're all players in a game, but nobody ever handed us the rule book. Well, what if you could actually learn the rules?
It really all comes down to that, doesn't it? Why do we make the choices we make, especially when our decisions bump up against somebody else's? Well, it turns out there's a whole field of study that's all about understanding and even predicting our behavior in these moments. It's called game theory, and it's what lets us finally see those hidden rules of the game.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at game theory as a whole new lens on life. Then, we'll dive into two classic examples: the surprisingly orderly stable marriage problem and the infamous prisoner's dilemma. And finally, we'll see just how this game is being played all around us every single day.
All right, let's jump right in. Part 1, a new lens on life. This is all about learning to spot those hidden patterns that are driving what people do. Okay, so what is game theory? Officially, at its core, it's the study of strategic decision-making. And a strategic situation is basically any time the outcome of your choice depends on the choices of other people. That's it. Game theory gives us the framework to analyze these interactions, whether we're competing, cooperating, or doing a bit of both.
But honestly, forget the textbook definition for a second. The absolute best way to think about game theory is like putting on a special pair of glasses. Suddenly, all the messy, seemingly random ways people interact, they just kind of snap into focus. You start to see the logic, the incentives, and the patterns hiding in plain sight.
So let's actually use this new lens. We're going to start with a really cool example called the stable marriage problem. It's a perfect illustration of how a few simple, structured rules can create an outcome that's surprisingly fair and, well, stable. So imagine you've got a group of men and women, and they all have a ranked list of who they'd like to partner up with. The Gale-Shapley algorithm gives us a clear step-by-step way to solve this. In round 1, every man proposes to his number 1 choice. Then each woman looks at her proposals and says maybe to her favorite and no thanks to the rest. All the rejected men then move on to their second choice. This whole thing repeats, with women always able to trade up if a better offer comes along. And get this, a version of this exact algorithm is used every year to match medical students to hospitals for their residencies. And here's the magic. The process guarantees a stable result. What does that mean? It means there are no two people who would both rather be with each other than with their current partners. There's no incentive for anyone to break things up. So a simple set of rules takes what seems like a complicated social mess and creates a fair and predictable outcome for everybody. Pretty amazing. But, game theory isn't always about creating these neat, cooperative endings. Sometimes, the rules of the game can lead everyone into a trap. And for that, we have to talk about the classic prisoner's dilemma. This is where we see why perfectly rational, logical choices can lead to results that are, for the group, completely irrational.
Here's the classic setup. Two partners in crime are caught. They're in separate rooms, so they can't talk to each other. The police offer them each the exact same deal. So, put yourself in prisoner A's shoes. He's thinking, okay, if B stays quiet, my best move is to betray him so I walk free. And if B betrays me, my best move is still to betray him so I only get 5 years instead of 10. Meanwhile, prisoner B is in the next room doing the exact same math.
And this is the heart of the paradox. Just look at the options. If they could both just trust each other and stay silent, they'd each only get 1 year in prison. That's a total of 2 years, clearly the best outcome for them as a team. But because they can't communicate, pure rational self-interest pushes them both to betray the other. And the result? They both get 5 years. Their logical choices lead to a worse outcome for everyone.
The prisoner's dilemma is so powerful because it shows how individual incentives can trap us in a bad situation, even when a better one is right there. So how do you escape the trap? Well, everything changes if the game is played more than once. If those prisoners know they have to see each other again, suddenly reputation and trust enter the picture. Cooperation actually becomes the smart long-term play, because the short-term win from betrayal isn't worth being known as a traitor forever.
So, we've seen how game theory can create stability, and we've seen how it explains these bizarre paradoxes. This brings us to our last big idea. The game is everywhere. Now we get to see how these concepts pop up in places you'd never expect. Seriously, once you put on those game theory glasses, you can't unsee it. Think about two companies deciding how much to spend on ads. If they both spend a ton, they just cancel each other out. But if one stops, the other gets a huge advantage. It's a classic prisoner's dilemma. Same for countries in an arms race or bidders in an auction. Even in nature, animals competing for food are playing a high-stakes evolutionary game. And yes, even figuring out who does the chores, that's a game too.
And this quote really sums it all up. Game theory isn't just some abstract thing for academics. It is a powerful, practical tool for understanding the world. It helps you see the players, the rules, the motivations, the payoffs. And once you see that hidden structure, you can finally understand why things happen the way they do.
Which leads us to one final thought. As you go about the rest of your day, just look around. That negotiation at work, that conversation with your family, even just sitting in traffic, there's a strategic game happening. So the question I want to leave you with is this. What game are you playing right now? And now that you know a few of the rules, how might you play differently?